Hey, yo, I don't know who need to hear this, but I'm not a bishop, a pastor, a deacon, nothing of that caliber. I don't think that need to be said. You know what I mean? Because people keep asking me, man. People keep inboxing me this in my inbox, and I'm not neither one of those. Listen, I just want to explain something to you, right? I'm just a guy that found God. Well, let me correct myself. I'm just a guy that God found, right? I was living a worldly life. I'm going to put it that way. I was living a worldly life, right? And in the midst of me living a worldly life, I always believed in God, but not, so like I didn't pray every day. I didn't read the Bible. I believed in God, but I knew it was something after here. I always knew it was something after here. You know what I mean? I'm going to give myself a little bit of credit. I always knew that. You know what I mean? I always knew there was consequences for my actions. You know what I mean? I always knew that. I always knew that. I always knew somebody was watching over me, right? I always knew that. But I wasn't the guy I am today then. You understand? Then I was making mistakes and didn't care about it. I didn't really care about it. I wasn't man enough to hold myself accountable for the things that I was doing. You know what I mean? I say that to say this, though. I'm just going to give you a story, right? My wife used to always take my kids to church every Sunday, right? Her family is a church-going family. So her whole family, they all go to church on Sundays, and then they'll go to her mom's house and eat. I never had that. You know what I mean? My family was never like that. Church wasn't even talked about in my family. God wasn't even talked about in my family. You know what I mean? Not really. You know what I mean? My mom made sure we believed in God, though. She made sure we believed in God. My mom made sure we believed in God. I'm going to be honest, you know what I mean? But church wasn't talked about in my household. You know what I mean? And me personally, I used to always think the churches was after people money. I used to think the churches was after people money, right? But let me get back to the story. One Sunday, my mother-in-law come over and she asked me a question. She said, "How come you never go to church with your family? I see you here every Sunday and you never go to church with your family." I said, "Because I don't have to go to church to believe in God," which is true. Which is true. You don't have to go to church to believe in God, which is true. And she said, "Well, I think you need to come to church." And I remember getting mad. Like, I remember telling my wife, like, why would make her think she could say something like that to me? I'm a grown man. If I want to go to church, I go to church. I ain't got to go to church. What's wrong with her? I was mad, right? And my wife, she get mad that her mom even asked me, right? But this is how God worked, though. People how God worked, though. So that next Sunday, I end up going to church, right? So now I'm hostile, I'm mad, I'm looking for a reason not to even be here. You know what I mean? I'm doing it for all the wrong reasons. I'm going to church for all the wrong reasons. I'm going to church to make my point. You know what I mean? That the church only wants your money. You know what I mean? I go to church to make my point, right? And to be honest with you, I can't even remember the service. I don't know if it was good or bad, but I went in there with a vendetta. I went in there to prove a point. And I remember at the end of service, the bishop say, "Okay, it's time to pay your tithes." I said, see, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. They just want your money. I was waiting on that moment. I'll be honest with you. I was waiting on that moment, right? I was waiting on that moment. I didn't give that church a chance. You know what I mean? I did. I was waiting on that moment. But, oh, Mom. Okay, but I was waiting on that moment. I'm sorry, somebody was calling. But I was waiting on that moment, right? But now, after I did that, the following Sunday, I ended up going, no, the next Sunday, it ended up being Mother's Day. The Sunday after that ended up being Mother's Day. And my wife wanted me to come again because the church do something very special for the women on Mother's Day. So I ended up going, but this time I went with a different heart, you know, because I had already proved my point. So this time I'm going with a different heart, you know what I mean? So I go into church, and they was giving the women all these bags, like with these goodies in it, like these nice little, they had like necklaces and all type of stuff in there. But it was, and I was like, man, okay. Now I'm coming with a different heart. So I'm like, how can they afford all this, right? So I'm like, okay, at least he is doing something with the money. At least he's giving the money back to the congregation. You know what I mean? I said, okay, I understand. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So now I'm giving him a chance, and I'm hearing him preach, right? And as I'm hearing him preach, man, I don't know why, but I just get teary-eyed, man, and just start crying. Like, not crying, but, you know, like weeping a little bit. Like, just a little teardrops, you know what I mean? And I catch myself. I'm like, woo. And I was like, okay, I like this. I like how that made me feel. Like, my spirit was, I said, okay, I like how that made me feel, man, because I felt like he was talking to me, and he was, because he was staring right at me. I ain't gonna lie to you, he was staring right at me. He was staring right at me. And then in this church, this how good God is, man, because if it wasn't for my mother-in-law coming and telling me about going to church, I wouldn't be in the Bible. I wouldn't be reading that Bible. I wouldn't be into God as much as I'm into God. Now, every day, I pray for my food, no matter where I'm at. I don't care if I'm in public. You're going to see me praying for my food. Now, I listen to nothing but gospel music. Bro, at some point, beforehand, Boosie and Mo3 was my favorite artist. That's all I listened to. Boosie, Mo3. You know what I mean? That's every time you see me, that's what I was bumping. Young Dolph. You know what I mean? Key Glock. You know what I mean? Now, all I listen to is Tasha Cobbs, Kurt Franklin, CeCe Winans. Like, bro, Pastor Mike. People names I didn't know before. Tamala Mans. People names I didn't know before, I know now because all I do is listen to their music. Who knew by her coming and saying, why you don't go to church with your family, would change my whole life? Who knew that? That one little incident changed my whole life. That's why you gotta be a good listener in this world. And sometimes you gotta take advice, even if you don't even agree with the advice then and there. Still get that knowledge. Still understand what was said. You understand? Because that changed me forever. That little conversation changed me forever. That little just go to church changed me forever. And that's all I wanted to share with y'all, man. And on that note, I'm gone.